Welcome to the fight of your life. Are you willing to die to shine? Nobody is taking us down. We are here for the crown of sound.
All right, we're here with Rob Zombie joining us in the Power Hour. Rob, you know him as a singer, songwriter, director, author, vegan, all around great guy. Rob, so good to see you. Welcome to the Power Hour.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
So obviously, you know, there's so much great stuff coming up, including you're going to be playing both the Welcome to Rockville and Sonic Temple festivals coming up. But I also saw this is the 20th anniversary of one of your classic films, and I cannot believe that we're about to start hitting these incredible anniversaries of all these movies. And what's it like for you looking back all these years on your film work?
Well, it's pretty weird because the first movie, you know, I mean, I actually made the movie 23 years ago, but this is the 20th anniversary of it actually being released because it had such a, you know, a screwy history of getting released by being dumped by Universal, then dumped by MGM, and finally coming out on Lionsgate. So it's a miracle that this movie exists, and it's insane that the fan. I mean, this movie is 100% a fan kept alive scenario. You know, the fans found it and they made it live for the last 20 years because, you know, people like to talk about cult movies and what a cult movie is. This is truly a cult movie because it was a movie that got terrible reviews that no one cared about, that got dumped by studios. And luckily Lionsgate picked it up, but the fans ran with it, you know, because by any other means, it would have just been forgotten forever. So
yeah,
and
the fans are the most important thing. At the end of the day, it's what the fans think, and they love it and consider it a classic. Rob, it's so great to see you. Last time we saw each other, we were at the Whiskey A Go Go, right?
Yes, we were watching Kiss. The beginning of the end. Was that actually the beginning of the end of the road tour? I think it was. I think that was where they started.
Yeah,
right?
It was the day that they couldn't actually get all their outfits on and their boots on in the Whiskey. There wasn't enough room, so I think they had to do it at the Rainbow and like walk down the street, which they
they like walked out. Yeah,
walk down Sunset, and they weren't very happy about it, by the way. But it was great. It was you were there, Billy Corgan, Jerry Cantrell, a whole group of us. It was a great time.
Oh, were they okay? Yeah, I remember seeing Tom Morello there.
Yeah.
And you, that's all I remember.
Yeah, but it was great. It was really great hanging out with you. So I've got you, Rob, you know, it's amazing. I'm looking back on it now, since we've been doing things together, really since the White Zombie days. We did so much cool stuff together, you know, at MTV and through, you know, radio and TV over the years. But can we talk about just your performances, because you got as much more swagger, more edge. I mean, I saw you Louder Than Life, and I was just so blown away. Can we talk about your live shows? Because they just crush.
Sure.
You give everything when you come and perform live.
Well, yeah, the live show is everything to me. I mean, you know, every business has changed so much. Like the music business sucks compared to what it used to be. It used to be really fun. You know, record came out, you bought the record, you did an in-store, thousands of fans showed up. It was like this it felt like electric. You wait for your video on MTV, all this shit. And now it's just like, hey, did you see the numbers on YouTube? You're like, what the fuck? You know, it's horse shit. But with that being said, the live show is exactly the same in the experience. You know, okay, everybody's a little grayer, to be sure. The fans are, you know, not... Back in the day in the 90s, it really seemed like the fans did not want to get out alive. They were ready to kill each other. It's a little more safe now. But everything else just feels the same. That's especially why I like touring with the Coop, because that is the closest I ever feel like being on the road, like in what I should have been born sooner and earlier. I mean, I could have toured in the 70s, but that's the feeling. Like me and him together, I'm like, man, this is what it should have been, especially when we're in old shitty arenas that seem like they've never changed since the 70s. I love it.
I kind of like how venues never change, though. I feel like it just brings back the nostalgia of everything, and that's why we enjoy Rainbow so much.
That's right, exactly. Nothing's different there now.
I mean, some venues really, they have a spirit. Like you go into some of these old arenas and you go, they have not changed a seat, a cinder block. There's actually, I can't remember where this arena is, but they have, you know, that movie Slapshot.
Yep.
Yeah. They shot a lot of that movie in that building. They have a Slapshot museum in this arena, and it is a dump, and it is the greatest place to play. And I wish I could remember where it was, somewhere in the Midwest.
Yeah.
probably torn down by now, unfortunately.
I
So
love that.
shouldn't even
I
mention.
would love to ask you what it was like being on the road with your brother. Powerman 5000, that was so cool because I remember you posting something. You're probably one of my favorite people to follow on Instagram because you're constantly posting these throwbacks and these incredible moments that a lot of us didn't even know had happened. But you posted this
Yeah.
old photo of you and your brother saying, "It's finally going down. We're going to be
Oh,
going
yeah,
on the
yeah.
road together." And I thought that was incredible.
Yeah, last summer was fantastic. I mean, we had a really good time. And everybody on the tour, not just my brother, but everybody, we were talking like, we go, this tour feels like how Ozfest used to feel. And that's the vibe I wanted. It's like, it wasn't like a million bands, it was just four of us, but there was sort of like that sort of camaraderie and vibe. Like if somebody's production was in someone else's way, there was no weird shit of like, oh, fuck you, it ain't moving. Everybody was just cool. And it was like, because that was the thing, the tone I wanted to set. I go, I don't need fucking ego wars all summer with bullshit. I just want everyone's show to kill and the crowd to be, feel like they got their money's worth. So it was great having Power Man on board and Static X and Mudvayne. It was a good time. And this summer's again even bigger and crazy with Filter and Ministry and Alice Cooper. It's going to be awesome.
Actually, speaking of that run with Alice Cooper, we had him here a couple of weeks ago, and he told me that you guys get along so well because you both find comedy in thrillers and horror films. And it just made me picture you and Alice Cooper sitting in a theater together, watching a scary movie, and when someone gets scared, you guys just like laughing your asses off. But he had nothing but good things to say about you, of course.
Yeah, I love Alice. I've known Alice now for, I don't even know how long, at least 25 years, maybe longer. And we've only ever been to the movies together once. We went to see the remake of Nightmare on Elm Street. And I got to be honest, I fell asleep.
I'm surprised he didn't tell us that part.
Yeah, he probably didn't even notice. But it was while we were on tour, man, I was fucking tired. We're in the theater and it's comfortable and the movie was boring. And I was like, I was out. I got the gist, Freddy Krueger, yada yada. But I was out. No, but he's the best, man. I never, growing up. I mean, I loved Alice more than anybody, and I think of anybody when I go back and listen to older records. Sometimes you go back and you listen, you think like, I guess I was a stupid kid. That's why I liked it so much. But when I go back and listen to the shit he did, especially pre-Welcome to My Nightmare, I'm like, these records are fucking more amazing to me now than they were then. I'm just blown away. So to be able to tour with them and be friends with them is just, it's kind of cuckoo.
It's a pretty iconic duo right there.
Yeah, it really is. And when you listen to
but this part of the duo was just a dopey little Alice Cooper. I mean, I remember singing Schools Out when I was in second grade. So, had to catch up to him.
I think it's great. It's one of those things where, like you said, you were talking about the earlier records, and man, like his band was so great. Denny Dunaway, one of the best bass players. That guy played he was so melodic. He was like a lead guitar player on bass. So great, right?
Yeah, no, and when I performed with Alice at the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, it was with the original guys.
Yeah.
And I mean, I've heard him do those songs a bazillion times. And I was like, holy shit, this is the first time it's nothing against any band he's ever had. He's always got great musicians, but there's just something, the way Neil Smith plays drums, like there's just something different. And I was like, it sounds exactly like the records. It was just something, it was bizarre. It blew me away. They just had some chemistry that they still have.
I don't know. I think you were there, Rob. But we did one of the Golden God Awards one year, and we got the original Alice Cooper group to reunite. And I think it was right before the Rock Hall that year. And we had Glenn and Dennis and Neil Smith and all there. And I'll never forget that someone's like, "Do you want to come to?" Or Shep Gordon was like, "Do you want to come to the rehearsal space?" And it was like a cartoon image of me after. In smoke, I ran to the rehearsal space and got to watch them. They might have only played 3 or 4 songs live on the show, but in rehearsal, Is It My Body, Hello Hooray, Killer. And I got to just be a fly in the wall watching that stuff. And I'll never forget that, so many of our contemporaries came down that night to just sort of watch, including, Pat Smear and Grohl and all those guys. And I remember Sebastian, all you guys everyone sort of became a teenager again watching the original group, because you're right, it is something different with that original band. there, and those guys were a high school band together, right? They were the original
Yeah.
Spike.
Yeah, yeah. It was just special. Some bands just have that time period. All those records I made, even the ones I don't like, Muscle of Love, that they don't really play stuff off, still fucking awesome record.
They really are. And hey, Rob, I got to remind you of something quickly. Do you remember we were doing the MTV really early on when we became friends? I was White Zombie's go-to guy at MTV, and we were doing this thing in Vincennes, Indiana, where it was called Invade Your Space. There was a contest. You won your house to be rebuilt. But do you remember how cold it was when you guys were playing on the back patio? It was like winter, and I went to the only thing in town, which was a Walmart that was the center of town, and I bought gloves to cut all the fingers off these work gloves so you could play guitar. It was unbelievable.
That's funny.
I remember that. It was so great.
Yeah, I remember you guys had rented some kind of like shitty RV.
Yeah.
And I remember sitting in this RV. I wasn't with the band. I was sitting with Chris Hardwick and Jenny McCarthy. And it was freezing. There was no heat in the RV, and everyone was just bundled up like, this is fucking shit.
Freezing your asses off.
Yeah, when we played, we jump around so we warm up. But yeah, that was pretty funny.
That's awesome. And there was also a question that I asked Alice that I wanted to ask you as well, because it was one thing I truly didn't know about Alice and Cheryl, his wife that he's been with for a really long time. I asked him, what does a date night look with the two of you? And he had a hilarious answer. He said that he takes Cheryl to a cheap motel and they act like they're just newly together. But I would love to know what you and Sherry do on a date night and what you guys get into. I know that you're both vegan, so I want to know if you have any vegan restaurant recommendations or anything like that.
Well, yeah, I mean, when we're in LA, for sure. I mean, every 2 blocks is a vegan restaurant. I mean, some of them are crap because there is now, we tend to not eat like, people like, I didn't think you could get fat being a vegan. Oh, you can get fat.
Yeah. You definitely
look at the calorie count. Go to Veggie Grill and go like, God damn, 1,500 calories for this taco. But no. Where do we go? We go everywhere. I can't think of anything off the top of my head. Which is actually what it starts looking like. What do you want to eat? I don't know. Where should we go? I can't think of anything. I'm pretty bad with remembering restaurants.
Well, I do remember how nice it was, Rob.
Usually comes to me.
It was great because you and Sherry took me out to dinner when I used to live in New York and I came to LA and I was working. It was so cool. You were like, hey, man, you want to go have dinner? We're going to go to a cool vegan restaurant. And you, me, and Sherry went out.
Where did we go? Do you remember where it was? You remember everything.
That's how I know.
He does. He remembers everything.
I usually do, Rob, but I don't remember the restaurant. I just remember how cool it was. I remember everybody recognized you when you got out of the car because you're still Rob Zombie no matter where you are. So, like, the entire restaurant, they were like, wow, that's Rob Zombie. I just remember that. But I had such a great, you and Sherry were so kind to me to take me out when I came to town.
Oh, that was fun, man. We loved hanging out with you. I have to duck out of frame for a second because I have like 1% battery left in my computer.
Don't let it die. Don't let it die.
Plug it in.
All right, so Alice and Cheryl have a cheap motel date, but then Rob and Sherry just do whatever floats their boat.
Right.
They just do whatever the heck they want.
Well, they go to cheap motels and we take Matt out to dinner. That's
there you go.
And that was an incredible date. I will say that, guys. Thanks for letting me be the third wheel. But it was awesome. And I want to say that. You know what else I got to say? Rob, one of the things I love that we bonded over, and people always think that you just like really one kind of music, but a lot of rock guys that I talk to listen to everything. And I know Josh also loves this artist very much. We all have this thing, we love Jim Croce. And I remember, going backstage at an very early Welcome to Rockville, and you and I are hanging out backstage, and we were listening to it backstage. Josh and I were singing Operator a couple weeks ago. And, it's just one of those things. It's like even when Ozzy's on tour on Ozfest, he's listening to the Beatles and Peter Gabriel backstage. That's how diverse people's musical tastes are. That's the cool thing. And I just wanted to tell you how much I appreciated that. Let's talk about the fact that your musical taste is so wide.
Well, I mean, it never was really like on purpose. I mean, I was talking about this just the other day. I think it was because, again, with the time period we grew up in, you listen to the radio and, okay, they just played Kiss, but now they're playing Diana Ross. Oh, now they're playing Alice Cooper. Well, now they're playing ABBA. And you just sort of listen to everything. Didn't love everything at the same level. Some things speak to you more than others. but you sort of get exposed to everything, like watching the midnight special. Well, if you were going to wait for Aerosmith, you had to watch Jim Croce. You watched now I got to watch whatever, Redbone so that I can get to, whatever sweet.
Yeah.
And but then as time goes on, you just kind of like it. And I hope people are still the same way. I know everything gets so compartmentalized with satellite radio, which is even old news anyway, I guess. But everyone's just, here's my playlist and this is all I care about. I like to still go and just download tons of records that I'm like, I never listened to this before. Let's see what this is all about. What, whatever, Warren Zevon, who I never really got into back in the day. Not because I didn't like him, I just never, and just dive deep on it, or Bob Seger, whatever, just to
Love Bob
keep it
Seger.
going.
Yeah.
I do. I really,
Well,
really
we
like
love
Bob
so many
Seger.
different things.
Great.
But that's it. That's why I had to bring up the Jim Croce thing, because I always loved that you and I
Yeah.
bonded over that. And then I talked to other rock stars and other musicians, heavy musicians, all kinds of musicians, and they're like, love Jim Croce. And I'm like, he's one of those guys who never gets any cred, right, Josh?
Well, I got to say, I feel like Warren Zevon is like in many ways is like a proto version of Rob Zombie. Werewolves of London, this guy was, trespassing in horror and rock, unintentionally in the late 70s, early 80s there. So he might be a lost ancestor.
Yeah, I don't know. It's just. I guess people, musicians just like good music. I don't know anyone who just like, I only listen to this and that's that. I don't know if anyone's like that really, but I mean, I remember, fans sometimes when you're new to punk rock, you're like, I don't listen to punk rock and everyone else can fuck off. Kind of like, because I'm 15 and I'm mad at everybody.
I'll give Rob credit. When a couple years back, I remember being somewhere with Rob and he walked by me and I went, is that a Badfinger shirt? And he's like, yeah. I'm like, oh man, I'd never seen a Badfinger shirt in circulation before, to be honest. And I thought that was so cool. But again, like Midnight Special, Wolfman Jack, like you really grew up during a golden age of incredible, as you mentioned, ABBA, Redbone, Elton John, all this stuff was happening. And it comes across in your music, including that great, Grand Funk cover you did a couple years ago as well, and those influences.
Yeah, I mean, that's why touring with Alice is so weird, because that's stuff that I had put like on such a pedestal that you just can't even think you're ever even going to go near, because it was a time where, like, in the 70s, you're kidding, like Zeppelin and Kiss, and they just seem, if someone said, oh, those guys live on this other planet called Planet Rock and they just come to Earth for shows, you'd be like, that makes sense, man.
When you're a kid, that's what you think.
It was so outside of the norm of what you think. And but yeah, so I don't know, I lost my train of thought. That's why now I don't know if people feel that way. Maybe they do, maybe they don't. But just to talk about Badfinger, I think Badfinger and the Faces are the two most underrated bands of all time. The Faces were the new Rolling Stones, and Badfinger were the new Beatles. And it just
so great. In fact, it was so nice when
great.
Breaking Bad made Baby Blue a hit again. It was like number 37 on the
so
charts.
cool.
oh really good.
That was so cool. So when a TV show, the way that, obviously Stranger Things resurrected Master of Puppets, but then you look, as I said, Badfinger getting that nod they deserved was just so great, because they put out some of the best singles of the 70s,
That's cool.
right?
I think it's good that the TV show could help out that struggling band Metallica. they needed that.
They needed that final push. Well,
People just they hadn't discovered them yet.
Well, Rob, we want to thank you so much for joining us. We were so excited to see you literally in a couple of weeks at Sonic Temple, and welcome to Rockville Festivals. We can't wait to see your performance and give our best to Sherry. And thanks so much for stopping by.
I will. Thanks for having me, guys. Good to see you all.